afternoon. We're glad to welcome you to our SAP Tech Talks webinar. A few words regarding the event organization. The webinar will be recorded and then posted on our YouTube channel. You may ask all your questions in the Q&A field. At the end of the event, the speaker will answer all of them and choose the best question, the author of which will get a prize from our community. Our today's speaker is Chaithanya Mirle, and the topic of his webinar is Hitchhiking to Master Data Governance. I give the floor to our speaker.
Thanks, Hannah. So, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So, let me introduce myself. So, my name is Chaithanya. I work as a senior solution architect at EPAM Systems. So, I have over 20 years of experience in SAP with the different technologies, and SAP MDG being one of the major of them. Right. So today, let's. I want to start with the topic of what master data itself is, because some of you might be experts in it, but some of you also are quite new to the topic. So let's try to start with understanding what master data is, and then we'll try to understand the SAP MDG as a product, and then we'll move on to the role that it plays in S/4HANA transformation project, and then we'll also talk about the new master data integration and the concept of one domain model that SAP has come up with, right? Okay, so talking about what master data itself is. So master data is a special kind of data that kind of gives a context to any business transaction, right? So if you take any business transaction like sales order, it requires some data like customer data, material data. These are some of the classic examples of what master data itself is. Now, the master data, this kind of data can exist on its own, so it doesn't necessarily mean it has to have a business transaction itself. And companies run a lot of analytics on top of it, and that's why enterprises consider it as their own asset, right? So, and because it's required for every business process in a company, it's kind of the DNA of an enterprise, right? So if you think about how to make your sales more effective, you need a good master data. If you want to make your supply chain efficiency, you need good material master data. If you have to make good procurement decisions, or if you want to make your assets utilize better in a better way, if you want to make yourself more ready for change, you have to have a good quality master data. And if you talk about finance processes, if you want to make it more efficient, then your financial master data has to be in a very good shape. So that is what we mean by master data. So that is the kind of the core primary data feeder into this business transaction, right? Now, let's talk a little bit about the challenges faced in today's world. Today a lot of companies have very heterogeneous ecosystems with different kind of landscapes. So if you think about a company where they have a lot of customer management processes, you can imagine a customer record getting created through multiple channels, right? So a customer can be created through a call center, a record can be created by customer himself on the web portal, for example, right? And these applications could be working in silos. So, and over a period of time, you'll see a lot of duplicates. The customer record is not in a good quality, and this creates problems for the companies. So for example, a marketing team who wants to do some kind of analysis and territory management, probably design a loyalty program for it, they simply can't do it if they have duplicates and the records are not good, are not in a good order. Then they don't get an overview of their own customers, right? Another classic example, in especially in manufacturing and auto industries, is around material master data, where master data can be stored in a very redundant fashion, multiple records in different plant locations, and this kind of gives a bad picture or a distorted picture of their inventory. And this in turn leads to supply chain issues, overstocking of the same material, and all of that kind of adds over the overheads to your supply chain and costs ultimately. And this is the real time problems that the companies are facing today. And then if you also look at some business challenges, so if you imagine a company taking over another company or merging with another entity, and if you want to merge their IT systems, and if you don't have a good master data or like a central master data system, it is such a overhead to merge the IT systems of these companies, right? Or even something smaller like a restructuring of the company. And if your employee master data is not in a centralized way, there's no governance in place, then even restructuring itself causes a lot of problems, and there's overheads on top of it, right? Another problems that IT teams especially face is when they harmonize their landscape or they try to merge systems, and you will have a lot of local applications, local systems, which has master data stored locally. And when you try to merge these systems, it's simply not possible to merge it. And there's a lot of overheads, time, and effort put into that, right? So these are some of the very classic problems that today companies are facing. So what can we do about it? So one, to have a good master data management, you need three main components, right? So if you imagine a large organization where on the bottom you'll see the with legacy systems, with a lot of reporting systems, business network, cloud applications, they all have some kind of master data in them. And these applications are utilized by line of businesses like procurement, finance, customer processes, uh, and you need some kind of a consolidated master data system which governs this. So a good master data management system should have three components. One, it should have a central governance where which takes care of all the governance process of master data, makes sure it's created in the right way, the workflows are in place. So that is the responsibility of a central governance. And then it should obviously have a good quality tools that will do some kind of duplicate checks, tools that will ensure your addresses are in good shape, uh, tools that can integrate third party applications to ensure that the quality is good. And finally, it should also have a consolidation engine. A consolidation meaning it should have the ability to extract master data from these different systems, run these quality checks that are in place, and then replicate it, right? So these three components is one of the major components that a good master data system should have. So now that we understood what master data is and what are the major components that it should have, let's have a look at what SAP provides. So SAP Master Data Governance, or SAP MDG, comes in different flavors. And in this particular presentation, I'm talking more about SAP MDG on-premise on S4HANA, right? So I'll also quickly show you the other flavors, but primarily I'll be focusing on this. Now, SAP MDG, like any good MDM system, gives all the three components. So it comes with a pre-configured domain-specific master data. It has monitoring tools and quality tools. It has a consolidation engine, and the central governance part of MDG. It has its own staging area where the data is stored locally, and then it has a workflow engine, which upon approval, this data gets moved from staging to active area and then replicates to target systems, right? And another advantage of SAP MDG is its authorization concept is same as your ECC or your business transactional S4 systems, and that gives a big advantage when you're implementing your authorization concept over MDG, because yeah, I've come across where companies have worked on non-SAP MDM systems, and they kind of struggle coming up with the authorization concept, a unified authorization concept. And then it has a consolidation engine, so where you have out of box tools to extract data from multiple systems, run your quality rules on top of it. You can do match profiles and then calculate your best record. Yeah, we also call it as the golden records. And then you can cleanse it and then distribute it to multiple systems. MDG also provides some quality tools like the matching profile, which you can create so that when the user creates a record, it matches if there's a record already exists. You can integrate third-party software like Google APIs to do an address check or local government authority website. So those are some of the good features of MDG that comes out of box. Okay, now let's talk a bit more about how do we implement MDG itself, right? So when we are implementing central governance on MDG, we basically do five major steps, let's say. So we start with the maintain, where we have some kind of standard Fiori apps, which allows the users to maintain, like create and change master data records. They can submit it, and then it goes to validation stage, which is the second step. It validates against all these quality rules that you have created, and then gives and sends back to the user if there is some problem. But on the third step, it also goes through a workflow step. So where the data owners of that particular domain, for example, it could have one or more data owners for customer, they can have a check of all the data and they can say, okay, I approve this record. And upon approval, it then triggers the different interfaces, and that's the replication step, where the data gets moved from the staging area that I was talking about to active area and then to the target systems. And then finally, we come to the adapt step. This is not mainly done in MDG, but this is more for because in reality, master data sometimes needs enhancement for local usage as well. So that is mostly done in the local systems. So that's about central governance. Now, talking about the consolidation part, consolidation happens majorly in three main steps. We have the data load, we have enrichment, and activation. Right? Data load is where we extract data from SAP, non-SAP systems, load it into the consolidation area. We do some kind of initial checks. It could be manual check, or it could also be with some external tool. It could be something as simple as Excel sheet, for example. Uh, and then we go to the enrichment stage, where we try to enrich data. For example, we could use some external address service to enrich our data. That's usually the problem with addresses. Or we could use some kind of government authority checks to make sure the taxes are in place, right? And then we also do match profile runs, where I try to identify duplicates and ultimately calculate the best record. So, for example, if you have three duplicates, the consolidation engine says this is the best record you have, and you can either then take a decision to delete or archive other records. What you could also have option is to dig deeper into saying if there are any open transactions. You can then close those open transactions and then come back and delete it as well, right? So once this calculation of best record is done, we then move on to the replication step or activation step, where we then distribute it to the target systems. So now this whole consolidation is actually not done every time. Like, it doesn't mean every time a master data record is created, consolidation happens. But this is definitely done on the initial load, meaning when the MDG is first implemented. But you can also do it on a periodic basis, like every 6 months to every 1 year, to ensure your master data is in good shape. Right. So that's the second component. And the third component, and one of the major component which kind of ties this consolidation and central governance, is the quality management. Now, quality management is actually more iterative process. It's not like one time and you're done with it, but it's more iterative. So we first begin with defining quality, where we sit with the business experts and the data owners. We try to define what is quality for you, and we define these priorities, and then we go into the system, implement these quality rules. It could be something as simple as a small code, or we sometimes use BRF plus to implement this quality rules. We enter the matching profiles, and then over time we monitor it. So SAP MDG provides standard monitoring tools, which says, for example, 70% of your material data is in good shape, but 30% is not. And then you can go deeper into this 30% and see, hey, where the problem is. And you will then find some room for improvement, right? So, and then you come back to define quality, you can say, okay, I change my baseline, my threshold is now increased, and then you implement it again and you monitor, right? So over time, usually by 6 months and 1 year, you slowly start seeing improvement in this quality, right? So that's why it's more of a iterative process. Okay, so now that we have understood what are the different functional components that MDG system should have, let's have a look at how technical components of MDG on S4 HANA is. So when you activate as MDG on S4 HANA in the business framework, there are multiple packages that you need to activate. So the mandatory one is called the MDG core, which gives you all these yellow boxes, the technical engines behind MDG, the workflow engine, the staging areas, the consolidation engine, the business rules, the matching profile, all of that logic is basically activated. And then what MDG also gives you is these data models. So then you can choose for what data domains you want to use MDG. You have MDG-C, which is for customer, MDG-S for supplier or vendor. You could use one or all of them. And when you activate that, what in the back end, what happens is it generates the data structures of all of these data domains. In the next slide, I will also talk about the data model. But for me, this is one of the biggest advantage of using SAP MDG, because these data structures are exactly the same as the S4 HANA or the ECC data structures, right? So you'll see when you activate customer, for example, all the data structures like KNA1 and KNB1 is automatically created in the staging area, right? So that's the data models that gets activated. And along with that, you also get the UI layer, which is a combination of the consolidation cockpit. You'll get a task center where the approvers can get change requests, approve change requests. You'll also get Fury apps, which is kind of a portal for users to create and change master data records, right? Along with this, you also have the replication service, which is nothing but some standard iDocs and some SOAP services for business partners, which gets activated, and you could use this to integrate with any target system, right? So this is what you get by standard when you activate the MDG on S4 HANA. Right. Now, coming to the object model that I was talking about. So now this is the different object models, or the structures that comes out of box. So when you we have the 4 standard object models plus industry specific object model, which SAP developed along with Utopia. Uh, Now, if you have a look at this picture, you'll clearly see that the financials, material, supplier, they're all basically kind of a mirror image of the data models of S4HANA. So with financials, you'll get GL accounts, you get cost elements, cost centers, profit centers. With materials, you get the basic material data, you get the sales perspective, the logistics perspective, you get the business partner, both supplier and customer perspectives, the attributes of customers, and you also have the enterprise asset components as well. And other than this, in the last few years, SAP also is focusing on industry specific data models. For example, the retail and fashion management that you see here, which was developed along with a partner called Utopia. This is a data model which is focusing mainly on retail and fashion management, because their master data is slightly different to material data of a manufacturing industry, right? So that's why that's a bit different data model. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the most advantageous part of SAP MDG, that by standard you get all of these data models. I've seen a couple of customers where they went with non-SAP MDG and they struggled just to implement the data model, right? So this is one of the best part of MDG, in my opinion. Uh, and what you could also do is, on top of it, you can obviously enhance these data models to your own custom fields of material or customer that you have. And you can also create custom data models as well. So one of the typical example is in companies where it's very project driven. They have WBS elements as a master data, right? So you can have WBS element as a custom object model. Okay, so now that we have understood about SAP MDG, now let's quickly look at the what why MDG and SAP MDG plays a vital role in S4 HANA transformation project itself, right? So when we do a typical S4 HANA transformation project, we implement a full-blown process like order to cash and design to order and all of that. These are really huge processes with sub-processes and everything, and you'll quickly realize that each of these processes and even the sub processes, the primary data is master data. You cannot, without master data, these processes cannot work, right? Which in essence means a good master data is vital for a smooth running of this whole this order to cache itself, which means on top of it, S4 HANA transformation itself is dependent on how good your master data is. If you want a good return on investment on your S4 HANA, you need to have good master data, right? You need to have a good master data governance in place. So that is why I would really recommend, if any company doesn't have MDG system, MDM system, they have to have this in place before going for S4 HANA transformation project. You can always do it in parallel of S4 HANA transformation for sure. In fact, a lot of companies actually do that, but this they should always involve master data as part of S4 HANA transformation project. Right. Now let's talk about quickly on the diff way of MDG deployments, because there are different flavors. Like I said, there are different ways how we could deploy it. Uh, so there are three main ways that SAP recommends how you could deploy a MDG system. Now, to give a little background to this deployment options, when we say master data, there are categorically two major differences. We have the core master data, which is data which is common across the corporate. So you could have something like a name and address which is same in any region, right? You can go to US, Germany, India. Name is a name. Every customer needs a name, every customer needs an address. But when it comes to tax, it's wholly different in US, in Germany, in China. It's very different, and that is those kind of data we call as application specific master data, right? And then how this application specific master data is handled within a line of business is also different. So for example, how your finance department visualizes a customer record is different to how your sales guys visualize a customer record. So that's why we call it as application specific master data. Now, keeping that in mind, so that one there are two main ways how you can deploy MDG. One, we call it as the centrally managed MDG system. So this is one of the most common, and a lot of enterprises have this kind of deployment, where we have one central instance of MDG, and you can use MDG on premise S4 HANA for such a deployment option, where everything core and application master data is governed in this central system. But of late, there are some cons to it, some negative things about this, and that's why which something which is becoming quite popular is the federated MDG system, where we have one central core master data, but we also have several other application specific MDG systems as well, and that's what we called as federated MDG. And for this, you could have a on-premise S4 HANA system, and then you could have either a cloud edition of S4 HANA MDG, or you could also have on-premise even for the local application MDG as well. And the final one, local MDG, is targeted mostly for the small businesses who have one instance of S4 HANA cloud, and they want to have a separate MDG system. In those kind of scenarios, we recommend S4 HANA cloud for MDG, uh, uh, which is nothing but a S4 HANA cloud with MDG package activated in it. Right. So Let's talk a little bit more about centrally managed system, and I will also quickly explain why I meant it also has some disadvantages. So, as in a centrally managed system, we have one S4 HANA S4 MDG system, and this has everything, right? It has the governance for all the data models: finance master data, core master data, application master data, everything inside this. uh, this is a very typical example, especially for finance and material master data, because that is anyway governed at the corporate level, right? So it works good. But when you come to something like customer master data, the problem is the customer, how it's handled by marketing team, by finance team in US might be different to how it is handled in Germany, right? And and the problem occurs when you want to implement a different governance for each of them. And that is why SAP has come up with something called federated MDG. So in federated MDG, what happens is we try to manage the core attributes centrally, typically on a SAP MDG on-premise system. But we'll also have several satellite MDGs to manage this application-specific master data system. So in this kind of system, there's no one system where the master data record can be changed, but multiple systems the users can change the master data system. So the whole concept is as centrally as possible, but as decentrally as needed, right? This has several advantages. It gives a lot of flexibility for the companies to implement governance locally, to based on different line of businesses, based on different regions. So it has multiple options. But you can imagine, technically, the integration points have now multiplied, right? So technically it becomes such an overhead to integrate and keep this MDG synchronized, because the whole idea of federated MDG is this whole MDG ecosystem works as one, even though technically these are different systems, which means your integration effort is multiplied now. So in order to resolve this, SAP has now come up with something called master data integration, right? So, SAP Master Data Integration, or MDI, as it is called, is a multi-tenant cloud service which is hosted on BTP, and this takes over the whole integration of different MDGs and non-MDG systems as well. So the whole idea is i- i- the MDI knows who needs what, yeah, which system needs which master data, and the MDI system only talks to this MDI service, and then this MDI then distributes to multiple records. Now, this obviously enables editing master data in multiple systems, because it can then say, okay, hey, I changed this in my system, and MDI says, okay, no problem, and then it can distribute, right? So you don't have to worry about integrating each application with each other application, so which is what happens in a federated MDG. It also enables interoperability, because now, for example, business partners on S4 HANA needs a SOAP interface, but C4 HANA needs a REST interface. But MDI has the capability to map between these two protocols and still work seamlessly, right? So that's one of the biggest advantages of SAP MDI. Now, which SAP MDI works along with something called one domain model. These two are kind of need to work in order to be federated MDG to work seamlessly. So in future, I would imagine MDI to look something like this, right? So we will always have applications with one domain model. Currently, as for HANA, Ariba, and SuccessFactors are implemented on one MDM. There's still some SAP applications which are still not in one MDM, and you'll one domain model, and there'll always be third-party applications which will never be on one domain model, right? Uh, so the applications which are on one domain model, they can directly interact with MDI on BTP, and MDI can take over the integration and distribution to other systems, right? For applications which don't have a one domain model, they can always utilize the cloud integration, which comes as part of the SAP integration suite, and that has something called MDI adapter. This comes in the newer versions of cloud integration, and this MDI adapter is capable of reading the semantics of one domain model out of MDI service, and you could simply expose this to the outside world, and these applications which are not one domain model can then interact with MDI. If you have S/4HANA Cloud, you could always use the API Business Hub, which also has one domain model APIs exposed. You can use that. You can map your master data representations of third party to then communicate with S/4HANA Cloud, right? So SAP is investing quite heavy to move all of SAP applications over to one domain model, because that is one of the strategies of SAP in coming years. So this is how I would imagine in the future how a MDI integration would work across the landscape of a large company. Right now, we spoke a lot about one domain model. So to briefly give you an inside view of what one domain model is. So a few years back, SAP, I would have read the news about intelligent enterprise business process, which means a business process could span across different applications, not just S4HANA. It could be from JD Edwards to Salesforce to C4, S4HANA to Ariba, all of that in one process. And in order to have one seamless business process, you obviously need all of these applications to communicate in one language, right? And if each of them have a different representation of business object, then your mapping and integration is such a big effort. Right now, that's why SAP realized this, and they came up with the concept of one domain model, where something, for example, a business partner has a common semantics, common metadata across S4 HANA, C4 HANA, Success Factors, and Ariba, and MDI. Along with MDI, they can seamlessly integrate and talk to each other without much effort of integration. Uh, so so ultimately, customers, they don't need to implement any of their own replication or their own integration solution, but SAP MDI along with one domain model can take over this whole effort of integration. And SAP has already committed investing a lot in this in the coming years, and we'll for sure see one domain model and MDI slowly becoming more and more popular in enterprises. So that's it for today, actually. So to wrap up, so we spoke about what master data itself is, what a good MDM system should have, the three main components: the central governance, quality management, and consolidation engine. We talked about what SAP MDG gives and the role that it plays in S4HANA. And we also spoke about some very important topics like how to deploy it, what are the options that you have, and what are the flavors of MDG you have. And then we also covered the new concept of MDI and one domain model, right? So this is what this whole presentation was, to give you a good overview of master data and what the future of master data in SAP ecosystem looks like. So I'm ready to take some questions at this point. And like Hannah said, any good question, there's a prize to win. So please shoot out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Yes, we have some questions. The first of them is how
Mhm.
much effort does it take to extend out-of-the-box model with non-standard fields?
Right. So it depends on how complex you want to do the extension. So something as simple as, let's say, you want to add 10 new fields to a business partner, it takes one day. For me, I've also done it in few hours, so it shouldn't take much time.
Thank you. The second question, does creating quality checks and workflows in MDG requires ABAP development skills, or everything can be done using BRF Plus?
Right. So in my experience, majority of them will can be done in BRF plus. But there are scenarios where you would need some ABAP coding, especially around if you need some UI checks around in some of the applications are still WebDin Pro based, and if you need some UI checks, you would need some ABAP code. But I would put it more like 90% or 80% on BRF plus and what 10 or 20% on ABAP. So it's mostly BRF plus is still a primary tool.
Mhm. Thank you. Next question. Can we implement new Greenfield S/4HANA solution at the same time with MDG implementation, or should MDG be treated as a separate project after S/4HANA already went live? What is the
Right.
best practice?
Right. So there are two ways that works good. So one, the number one thing that I would say is you have to first study how your master data landscape is, because that really determines how big or how long your implementation itself takes. A very complex organization implementing the MDG for the first time obviously takes some time. It's not something that you could do in a couple of months. But if you already have a MDG system and you just want to improve that quality, then you could always do it as a parallel activity to your S4 HANA transformation project. In fact, even some of the large organizations, even though you call it as S4 HANA transformation project, but a small minor branch of it will be the MDM program. Or you could do both. You could do parallelly as well, but you could also have a small MDM implementation cycle and then start your S4 HANA transformation as well.
Mhm. Next, what is the difference between MDG and information steward?
Information, sorry, what? Information?
Information steward.
Okay. So MDG is the product. The SAP MDG is the Master Data Governance as a product, right? But information steward, it's a role that data owner plays. A steward, data steward, for example, is someone who governs the data. The name steward comes because he stewards how the data quality should be there, what is the workflow, how it should look, who should approve all of that. It's kind of a role that is played in MDG. So it's not
Mhm.
really a competitor or anything for MDG.
Thank you. Does the cloud MDG support data obfuscation, masking, encryption of sensitive data? Any reversed way of description back onto on-premise systems?
Yeah, so SAP MDG does support encryption and especially the UI level masking. This is especially in there are some countries where some local law states that some personal data of customers shouldn't be visible for everyone. In those kind of data, you could implement. Sorry, I forgot the name, but there is a package which you could always activate and you can select which fields are applicable for that, and it masks the users. Those data will not be visible for them.
Okay, next question. Is it a good idea use MDG for data migration in S/4HANA implementation?
You could use migration for master data, but for transaction data, no. It's not a tool for MDG is not primarily focused on migration. It's more for data governance rather than migration. For S4 HANA, especially if you want to migrate transactional data, definitely not. For master
Mm,
data, maybe yes. Yeah.
okay, next question. What does hitchhiking mean?
Okay. Um, well, this is something a name that we just came up when we were thinking out what to name this session. It's uh, Over the years I've realized that master data, even though it sounds simple, a lot of companies and a lot of people find it very difficult to keep this master data in a good shape, and that's why it's kind of more like a hiking where you sometimes you fall, sometimes you get up, you become dirty, but and then you finally reach that tip point. That's why it's hitchhiking to master data governance.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What are the main disadvantages of SAP MDG?
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, SAP MDG is one of the best master data. It's a product that's there in the market, right? So, if you talk relatively comparing to other master data system, I wouldn't say there are many disadvantages. The only negative point or the only disadvantage I see at this point is probably the UI layer, because some of the apps that you get out of box are still built on the older WebDynpro technology with BOPF on the back end, which can get very complex if you don't have a good ABAP skills. So that's the only disadvantage that I can think of now.
And one question. Do you have some predefined maturity level assessment tool or lists?
Yeah. So when we start a master data journey, so in generally that's one of the first thing that we kind of do. We assess at what stage a company is in when it comes to the maturity of a master data. So there are usually, like, we call it 5 stages of master data. There's level 1, level 2, up to 5. Level 0 is basically where there's no master data system at all. That's 0. And then the level 5, the highest, where they have kind of a governance in place. They have a separate master data system, with mostly like a federated MDG landscape, and all of them working seamlessly as one MDG ecosystem is something what we call as stage 5. But the question is very good. That is, doing this assessment is very important before you begin this journey. That's in fact one of the first things that we do.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Who must have access to change and remove master data in the company?
Right. There's no one answer to this, because we also call it as a data democracy, meaning everyone should have access to all the data. But that is easily said than done, of course. But the whole idea when you reach this assessment level 5 is the data is probably visible to everyone. Everybody could even change the data, but the data goes through a governance process, meaning the data is not active immediately. That's why you have the staging area. It gets stored temporarily until the workflow is approved, and then it gets activated, right? So theoretically, anybody can change master data, and that's the whole idea of this federated MDG, so that anybody in any system can change master data. But we have a governance in place. We have the master data integration in place that takes care of making sure that the governance is still in place, even though it's changed by anyone.
Thank you. How transport master data by MDG across environments?
Uh, can you come again? Sorry.
How transport master data by MDG across environments?
Uh, right. So, if I understood that correctly, you mean that if you're talking about how to transport your changes, your development changes, then it's based on ABAP system. So you have your standard TMS system to handle your transports, your and your change requests. But if you're talking about how data gets transferred from one system to another system, in a typical central managed option, we have the standard idocs, where these interfaces are triggered when the data is active, and the idocs are then distributed to different systems.
Perfect. Then, what are the key skills a person should master to be a good SAP MDG consultant?
Right. So this is a good question again, because SAP MDG is not something that can be done by one person, right? So there, when it comes to skills, there's different type of skill sets, and they work as one team. So we have the SAP MDG technical consultants who are specialists in ABAP, in WebInPro, in BRF Plus, in workflows. That is one kind of skill set, what we call as MDG technical consultants. Then we have the functional guys as well, who are experts in different domains. They are experts in financial domains, a typical financial consultant. We have the material SAP MDG, material consultants. So usually it's two different people, and it's not one guy who does the development as well as the functional. And then on top of it, we also have the MDG architects who are like, they're kind of the jack of all trades. They know a little bit of functional knowledge, also on technical knowledge as well. So it's like all these three work together for that.
And we also have one more question, which is
Mhm.
a bit more philosophical.
Mhm.
Could you please share the best way to enter SAP domain, which means like how to become an SAP expert?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a very broad question, I must say, because SAP it's a huge world, right? It's a universe on its own. So you need to decide what you're interested in, what your background is, because there's technical areas as well. Like I said, there are ABAP developers. So ABAP is still kind of a primary developing language. There's SAP BTP, which is the SAP, let's say, the cloud solution of SAP side, and that itself has so many technical ways. There's application development based on Node.js and Java. There is integration. There's integration suite, which is primarily for integration of cloud applications, on-premise applications, uh, and that is a technical world. And then there's a functional world where you have functional experts who are like deep into things like warehouse management, into financials, into supply chain. So you need to decide on which area interests you and which is your background, and then there are certifications for that, and I would say you could take up certification, and that's the best way to enter into the SAP universe.
Thank you. So, any other questions? While you are generating new questions to have a chance to get our cool prize, we encourage you to join our community on other social networks: Facebook, Telegram, LinkedIn, and of course, we're community platform via the link in the description.
Mhm.
So, checking the chat. As I see, for now, we don't have new questions. In case you will have them later, don't hesitate to contact us via any platform. So it's time to choose the winner. Chaitha, what do you think?
Yeah. uh, okay, to be honest, I forgot the questions. uh, can I see the questions anywhere? I
Um,
think the question about the transformation, the S4 transformation, and how whether to be done MDG before or parallelly, I think that was a very valid question, and in fact one of the biggest questions a lot of companies are
yeah.
asking for. I think that's a very good question. I would choose that.
Okay, yeah. It was the question about can we implement a new greenfield
Yeah,
S/4HANA solution at the
yeah,
same
right,
time?
right.
Yeah, perfect. And we found our winner. Congratulations, and please contact us via any platform regarding the prize delivery. Well, I'd like to thank the speaker for the interesting speech. As
Thank you
already
so much.
mentioned, today's webinar recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. The links to the recording will be sent separately. Colleagues, thank you very much again for your participation and have a nice day.
Thanks everyone for your time. Thank you. Bye.